Welcome to the 2010s. That's right, we're looking at science fiction and fantasy novels from the decade 2010 to 2019 as I uncover the three most underrated fantasy and sci-fi novels of this time period. Will you have read any of them? Let's find out. Welcome to Fantasy for the Ages, the show where a father and son talk about fantasy, science fiction, horror, and other nerdy things we enjoy. I'm Jim, the father of this channel, and this is the conclusion of a series I've been working through since the 1960s, talking about most underrated science fiction and fantasy books. It's also still just me. My son Zach will be with us for the next episode that you'll see, but today I'm concluding this massive dive through a whole bunch of fantasy and sci-fi books. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to give us a like. And if you haven't subscribed yet, we sure hope you will. We've got a lot of goodness for you to explore here at Fantasy for the Ages. All right, let's dive into the 2010s. What did the numbers reveal? Because when I choose the most underrated books of the year, they're not my impression. In fact, most of these books I'd never heard of before doing the research. That's the point. Too few people even knew these existed, but they're quality books. They're things that got recognition, even sometimes got awards, but they never got the sales numbers. Mainstream sci-fi and fantasy, it was like they didn't exist. Sure, some of you'll have known these books, but you're the minority. But these are books maybe you all should know, so you might want to check them out. 2010 kicked off the decade with some thrilling blockbusters that everybody knew about in fantasy and sci-fi. Brandon Sanderson began his Stormlight archive with The Way of Kings. Justin Cronin's The Passage announced that this author had finally arrived. And Suzanne Collins finished off The Hunger Games with Mockingjay, a global YA phenomenon, even if I don't think that book really landed the plane of the series so well. But it was easy, therefore, to miss the most underrated novels of 2010, and here they are. Number 3 is The Bards of Bone Plain by Patricia A. McKillop. This is a quality author who should never be listed as underrated, but it's happened before and it happens again. This is a fantasy novel, a mythic mystery style, and it's a standalone. An academic and his princess disciple uncover an ancient artifact tied to the legendary birthplace of music and become entangled in magic, mythology, and prophetic whispers echoing through time. Starred reviews from Publishers Weekly and Library Journal, plus nominations for the Mythiopoeic and Endeavor Awards were there. Yet despite McKillop's stature as an author and all of that, this haunting, introspective work saw only modest attention and light readership, making it a quietly brilliant but overlooked gem. Second most underrated for 2010 is Song of Scarabaeus, or Scarabaeus, or Scarabaeus. I don't know how to say this word. It's by Sarah Creasy. This is a science fiction romance novel. It's also a bio-cipher thriller. It's book 1 of, just because I gotta punish myself again, the Scarabaeus series. A genetically bound cipher tech and her unwilling partner must terraform a deadly world, confronting hidden agendas and their own clashing loyalties. Though nominated for both the Philip K. Dick and Aurealis Awards, Song of Scarabaeus struggled to break through in mainstream science fiction, despite its strong emotional core and thoughtful biotech exploration, leaving it largely unrecognized outside of dedicated readers. But the most underrated for 2010 goes to The Quantum Thief by Hanu Rajanimi. Someone's going to correct me on the name. I can count on you guys to catch me when I mispronounce. Thank you. This is hard science fiction, a space opera style, and it's also a heist story. It's book 1 of the Jean Le Flambour trilogy. A master thief is freed from his lunar prison to execute a grand heist across a quantum-engineered solar system. But first, he must outmaneuver both his own fractured memories and a cryptic patron. Despite being lauded for its world shaking concepts, cerebral pace, and literary polish, and receiving Locus and John W. Campbell Award nominations, the novel remained niche with limited readership and promotional reach, keeping it underappreciated within mainstream sci fi. 2011 was another big year in these genres, giving us The Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss, book 2 of the Kingkiller Chronicle, Ready Player One, a fun sci-fi story by Ernest Cline, and Mistborn, The Alloy of Law, as Brandon Sanderson starts off Era 2 of his Mistborn sequence. But there's 3 books here that I've got for you that were underrated, totally hidden by such brilliance and buzz. Let's see what you should check out. Third most underrated is Pym by Matt Johnson. This is a satirical adventure story and alternate history vibes. It's a standalone. A disillusioned Black literature professor embarks on a surreal Antarctic expedition, exploring the fictional island from Poe's The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym, to unearth both racial history and personal redemption. Praised across outlets like Vanity Fair as a blisteringly funny satire linking race, adventure, and myth, Pym received critical acclaim, but minimal science fiction or fantasy awards and low reader reach, making it a hidden standout of 2011. Second most underrated is Home Fires by Gene Wolfe. This is a literary science fiction novel with a relativistic space drama style and is another standalone novel. This is unique. A couple's plan to circumvent time dilation by sending one partner on an accelerated starship mission unravels decades of changed expectations, identity, and love once they reunite. Hailed by Kirkus and Strange Horizons as complex and enigmatic, this emotionally powerful but understated novel received no major awards and remained largely unread beyond Woolf's core devotees, despite its elegant handling of relativity and relationships. But the most underrated novel of 2011 is Vortex by Robert Charles Wilson. This is a hard science fiction novel of the space opera style and is book 3 of his Spin trilogy. Transported 10,000 years into the future, a former historian must unravel the mysteries of humanity's legacy and the enigmatic hypotheticals on a dying, quarantined Earth. Despite wrapping up an acclaimed trilogy, the first book, Spin, won the Hugo, Vortex received limited awards attention and moderate reviews, even from Wilson fans, letting its thoughtful exploration of time and legacy slip quietly into obscurity. 2012 was more than just the year that the Aztec calendar said everything was gonna end, and more than a pretty fun but ridiculously impractical disaster movie. It also gave us significant genre bestsellers like Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas, debut novel of an author who is now everywhere, and Shadow of Night, book 2 of Deborah Harkness's All Souls historical fantasy romance trilogy. The tides of the genre were changing. In the midst of all this, here's the 3 most underrated high-quality novels that tried to break out and never got any lasting notice. Number 3 is The Vor by B. Catling. This is a dark fantasy novel of a historical myth style and is book 1 of the Vor trilogy. In an alternate post-World War I world, a colonial European town stands at the edge of a vast, sentient African forest whose mysterious power reshapes its inhabitants' destinies. Despite glowing critical praise, including by Alan Moore with a foreword and strong coverage in The Guardian and Slate, The Vor sold poorly outside boutique circles and remains obscure, despite its mythic intensity and stylistic ambition. Number 2, A Face Like Glass by Frances Hardinge. This is an adventure fantasy story with surreal world building. It's a standalone novel. In the subterranean city of Caverna, a girl named Neverfell, with an honest face in a world of facades, becomes entangled in alchemical intrigues where emotions themselves are toxic commodities. Shortlisted for the 2013 Kitschies and praised for its inventive setting and moral complexity, it nonetheless flew under the radar outside literary fantasy fans and European markets, rarely reaching mainstream attention. But number one for 2012 is Alif the Unseen by G. Willow Wilson. This is cyber fantasy and a techno thriller, and it's a standalone novel. In a repressive Middle Eastern city, a young hacker uncovers a magical book of jinn secrets, setting off a revolution that merges the digital world with mythic power. Though it won the 2013 World Fantasy Award and drew attention for its cyber jinn fusion, Alif the Unseen sold modestly and received limited cross-genre media exposure, making it a niche gem with powerful socio-technical themes. In 2013, after having a whole mess of short stories published in various magazines over the years, Ann Leckie finally debuted her first novel, Ancillary Justice, which was not only a bestseller, but swept the 2014 Sci-Fi Award circuit, winning the Hugo, Nebula, Arthur C. Clarke, and British Science Fiction Awards. Margaret Atwood also had a bestseller, releasing Mad Adam, the final novel of her Mad Adam trilogy. Oh, and Veronica Roth rode a wave of YA SFF buzz with her third entry in the Divergent trilogy, Allegiant, another bestseller. Easy to get lost, then, were these three most underrated novels of 2013. Number three is S. Just S with a period, by J.J. Abrams and Doug Dorst. This is experimental mystery and a meta-fantasy. It's a standalone something, kind of like a novel. A physical novel titled Ship of Theseus becomes a puzzle box of marginalia and ephemera, hiding a layered mystery linking two readers, the author, and a secretive conspiracy. Celebrated by Wired as like downloading Lost straight into your brain, S received critical acclaim for its immersive format, but its dense, unconventional structure and limited mainstream exposure kept it from reaching a wider audience, giving it cult fan status, yet modest visibility. Number two is Parasite by Mira Grant, pen name for Shannon McGuire. This is biopunk medical thriller and is dystopian science fiction. I'm reading Mira Grant's Newsflesh series right now, so as I found this one, it went on my TBR. This is book one of the Parasitology trilogy. In a future where genetically engineered parasites maintain human health, one woman uncovers a deadly conspiracy involving the very organisms meant to save us. Lauded by NPR and others for its smart genre twist and viral premise, Parasite had solid buzz, but limited award presence and low Goodreads visibility relative to esse quality, keeping its high concept potential mostly hidden from wider audiences. Until now. Now you know it. Go check this book out. But number one for 2013 is Neptune's Brood by Charles Stross. Good old Charles Stross. We've seen him on these lists too many times. This is a space opera style hard science fiction novel with elements of economic and crypto literary themes. It's also a standalone novel, but it's set in the same universe as Saturn's Children. An interstellar accountant / chronicler follows her sister on a mysterious treasure hunt that reveals both financial and cosmic enigmas in a far future solar system. Despite being shortlisted for the 2014 Hugo Award, Neptune's Brood slid under mainstream radar. Its mix of dry economic theory, long-term futurism, and hard sci-fi charm appealed more to niche readers than to general science fiction audiences, making it a high-worth but low-exposure gem. 2014 gave me one of my favorite hard science fiction novels to date, The Martian by Andy Weir. Initially, it was self-published in 2011 on Weir's blog and then as a Kindle edition, but it came out in print in 2014 and was adapted to a blockbuster movie the very next year, Huge hit. In addition, Deborah Harkness completed her All Souls trilogy with The Book of Life, which debuted at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, a strong finish for this fantasy phenomenon. But here's the 3 most underrated of 2014 that could only dream of finding such heights. #3, The Burning Dark by Adam Christopher. This is a science fiction horror genre mashup. It's a space thriller and is book 1 of the Spider War trilogy. A lone captain aboard a failing space station battles isolation, cosmic dread, and creeping horrors as a malevolent signal threatens everyone aboard and below. Praised by SFX, Starburst, Sci-Fi Now, and the Roanoke Times for its atmosphere and gripping tension, The Burning Dark failed to break into mainstream awareness, overshadowed by bigger titles despite its horror meets spacecraft innovation. #2 for the year is The Girl in the Road by Monica Byrne. This is a speculative fiction novel, climate-aware sci-fi themes, and is a standalone. 2 women, decades apart, undertake parallel, life-changing journeys across a futuristic floating energy bridge between India and Africa, meeting at the nexus of climate crisis and personal transformation. Winner of the James Tiptree Jr. Award and finalist for the Kitschies Golden Tentacle, The Girl in the Road offers profound themes: identity, engineering, ecology, but its hybrid structure and limited marketing led to modest readership despite critical acclaim. But the #1 most underrated for 2014 is Echopraxia. This is by Peter Watts, a hard sci-fi novel of the biopunk style, and has some connection to First Contact. It's part of the Firefall series, sort of. It's a standalone sequel to Blindsight. A biologist joins a perilous mission to investigate a mysterious signal from deep space, confronting existential questions and a zombie vampire crew en route to First Contact. Despite strong critical praise, The Register called it a diamond cutter of hard science fiction, and its deep intellectual rigor, Echopraxia received minimal award attention and remains overshadowed by its predecessor, Blindsight, resulting in moderate reader awareness. 2015 brought us Golden Sun by Pierce Brown, the second book of the Red Rising saga, as this thing just started blowing up and bringing a lot of fresh attention to sci-fi. And Rick Riordan kicked off a new YA series, Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard, releasing The Sword of Summer to strong sales, including a 36-week run on the New York Times middle grade bestseller list. Here are the 3 books of SFF that were most under the radar at the same time, creating none of this kind of buzz. Have you heard of any of these? #3 is The Water Knife by Paolo Bacigalupi? Maybe? This is a hard climate dystopian near-future thriller and is a standalone sci-fi novel. In a parched dystopian American Southwest, a ruthless water knife enforcer, a brilliant journalist, and a displaced refugee fight for survival amid brutal water wars. Although earnestly covered by Wired and Kirkus for its stark climate realism and noir pacing, it received no major science fiction awards and drew relatively low public attention, making a high-concept, gripping thriller underknown outside committed climate sci-fi fans. Second most underrated is The Fisherman by Chigozie Obioma, literary fantasy of a mythic tragic style, and it's a standalone novel. In 1990s Nigeria, 4 brothers fishing in a forbidden river fall under a chilling prophecy from a madman, forever altering their lives. Shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize, yet largely overlooked by science fiction and fantasy communities, its haunting blend of myth, psychological suspense, and tragedy deserves far more speculative recognition as a rare, cross-cultural fantasy narrative. But #1 for 2015 is kind of a unique pick. I'm going with Monstrous, Volume 1 by Marjorie Liu and illustrated by Sana Takeda. This is dark fantasy, steampunk, and epic fantasy style. This is basically a graphic novel. It's in the comic series, and Monstrous is ongoing. So this was just volume 1, the very beginning. In a war-ravaged matriarchal empire, a young woman awakens with a monstrous secret inside her and must master ancient powers while hunted within and without. Despite multiple Eisner and Hugo wins later in the series, Volume 1 received surprisingly little mainstream attention upon release, overshadowed by novel-centric awards and leaving its stunning art and world-building under-discovered, making it a powerful, visually rich outlier within my underrated formulas. So it's quite possible you've heard of Monstrous now, maybe enjoy it, maybe have read it, but nobody was noticing it when the first volume was out. 2016 was all abuzz with Morning Star, the explosive conclusion to Pierce Brown's opening trilogy of the Red Rising saga. And of course, we didn't even know there'd be more books after these 3 at this point. It is a heck of a read. Harry Potter fans were also going off with the release of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, a play script rather than a book, but it's still sitting up on the bookshelf in my house. Zach and my daughter Melissa were all into it when it came out. And N.K. Jemisin released The Obelisk Gate in 2016, the best-selling second novel of the Broken Earth trilogy, which would win the Hugo just like its predecessor. But check out these 3 far less overwhelming novels that score the most underrated of 2016 by the numbers. Number 3 is Kingfisher by Patricia A. McKillop. McKillop, what are you doing down here again? This is a mythic quest contemporary fantasy style and is a standalone novel. When a group of knights and a young cook converge on an enchanted inn, they embark on a quest to retrieve a mythical object that can restore magic and truth to their fractured world. Winner of the 2017 Mythopoeic Fantasy Award and praised by Fantasy and Science Fiction and Kirkus, Kingfisher saw minimal mainstream attention, slipping past most fantasy readers despite McKillop's lyrical mastery and heartfelt storytelling. Number 2 for this year is Rosewater by Tade Thompson. This is a hard sci-fi novel with psychic first contact thriller vibes and is book 1 of the Wormwood trilogy. In a near future Nigeria, a government agent with psychic abilities investigates a mysterious dome that's changing humans and secrets that could reshape humanity. Though it later won the 2019 Arthur C. Clarke Award, at release, Rosewater had modest Goodreads visibility and few genre nominations. Its potent blend of Afrofuturism and alien mystery kept it largely hidden from mainstream science fiction discussions. But number 1 for 2016 is Too Like the Lightning by Ada Palmer. Hard science fiction novel, political speculative fiction themes, and it's book 1 of Palmer's Terra Ignota series. In a future of global peace and a gender-neutral society, a convicted murderer is released to live in confinement, igniting ideological upheaval and revealing the fragile foundations of utopia. Awarded the 2017 Compton Crook and shortlisted for the Hugo, this highly cerebral debut received strong but niche critical acclaim. Yet its dense philosophical prose and unconventional structure limited its mainstream sci-fi reach. N.K. Jemisin's Broken Earth trilogy finished up in 2017 with The Stone Sky, another Hugo winner and bestseller. In fact, each book of the trilogy won the Hugo. But we also had another big hit in hard sci-fi from Andy Weir, the novel Artemis. And from more fantastical sci-fi, as Martha Wells kicked off the Murderbot Diaries with the very successful novella All Systems Red. And when I say successful, that was in sales, yes, but also with a good deal of awards acclaim. At the other end of the attention spectrum, here's what the data says are the most underrated 3 novels for 2017. Number 3 is Beasts Made of Night by Toshi Onyebuchi, a YA dark fantasy novel in the magical realism vibe, and it's book 1 of the Made of Night duology. In a Nigeria-inspired realm, a young ritual butcher whose power creates monsters must come to terms with his responsibility and identity as societal tensions rage around him. A 2018 Nomo Award winner and praised by NPR and Time as a top fantasy read, it remains overlooked by mainstream fantasy readers and awards, despite its deeply rooted cultural voice and fresh mythic framework. Second most underrated for 2017 is Terra Nullius by Claire G. Coleman. This is a post-colonial, speculative sci-fi novel and is a standalone. In an alternate Australia, natives and settlers coexist under colonial oppression until inexplicable alien invaders probe their world and unsettle their power dynamics. Praised by the Stella Prize judges and reviewed in Kirkus, Locus, and Publishers Weekly, Terra Nullius shines with sharp cultural allegory, yet failed to gain traction outside Australian literary circles, obscuring its potent rallying cry on settler colonialism in sci-fi. But number one was Autonomous by Annalee Newitz. This is a biopunk techno-thriller sci-fi novel, another standalone. In a future where both humans and robots can be owned, a drug pirate faces off against a law enforcement android as they race to control a dangerous bioengineered medication. Though it won the 2018 Lambda Literary Award and earned a Nebula nomination, Autonomous received limited mainstream sci-fi visibility with compelling commentary on intellectual property and identity largely overlooked by the broader genre community. 2018 gave us Vengeful by V.E. Schwab, a bestseller from a fan-favorite author of this time, and Circe by Madeline Miller, which got the Oprah Winfrey treatment and popped up on all sorts of best fantasy lists. But here are the hidden gems of 2018 you may never have heard of at all. Number 3 is Foe by Ian Reid, a psychological thriller with science fiction overtones. This is a standalone novel. A couple, isolated on a remote farm, faces a staggering choice when a stranger arrives from a space station with an unsettling offer, forcing them to question reality, identity, and trust. Despite being preliminarily nominated for horror awards and praised for its eerie existential tension, Foe didn't crack mainstream sci-fi awareness. Its blend of domestic psychology and mild sci-fi masked its genre value. Second most underrated is Severance by Ling Ma. This is literary sci-fi, post-apocalyptic, and satirical fiction. It's another standalone. A young immigrant navigating corporate drudgery survives a relentless fungal pandemic that mirrors the mindless routines of her office life and grapples with identity in a world undone. Though Severance won the prestigious Kirkus Prize and appeared on major Best of the Year lists, it received little attention in science fiction-specific awards and mechanisms, causing its sharp critique of work, culture, and immigration to slip past genre audiences. 2018's most underrated novel goes to Semiosis by Sue Burke, a hard sci-fi novel of first contact and planetary ecological themes. This is book 1 of the Semiosis trilogy. Colonists on the alien world of Pax learn to communicate and coexist with a sentient, centuries-old plant species that demands a radically different relationship with life. Despite being shortlisted for awards like the Arthur C. Clarke, Campbell, and Locust First Novel, Semiosis gained only modest readership and was overshadowed by blockbuster sci-fi releases, making its eco-intelligent narrative a hidden gem. Okay, my friends, 2019 is where we stop for this episode, and it's got a couple of really big ones to lead off. Blake Crouch released Recursion, the 2019 Goodreads Choice Award winner for Best Science Fiction. And Tamsin Muir put out Gideon the Ninth, kicking off the best-selling Locked Tomb series. But hiding in their shadows, way back in the far corner, you can find these 3 most underrated 2019 selections. Number 3, The Old Lie by Claire G. Coleman. Post-colonial science fiction of a dystopian style, this is a standalone. Australia joins an interstellar federation to protect itself, but its indigenous peoples are forced to confront new layers of colonial violence, and unexpected rebellions emerge. This novel garnered praise in Locus, Canberra Times, and Australian Book Review for its raw allegory on settler colonialism and justice, but saw minimal international visibility or genre award traction, despite deeply resonant themes. Second most underrated is Dead Astronauts by Jeff Vandermeer, surreal science fiction with echo-speculative themes. This is a standalone novel, though loosely linked to his novel Born. In a fractured post-Anthropocene world, 3 settlers, including a shape-shifting astronaut, wage a metaphysical war against a corporate-driven apocalypse across time and reality. Although it was a finalist for the 2020 Locus Fantasy and Dragon Awards, Vandermeer's cerebral, experimental narrative made it hard to classify and harder to market, leaving it overlooked outside devoted, eco-speculative, and literary sci-fi circles. But number 1, most underrated for 2019, Perihelion Summer by Greg Egan. This is a hard science fiction novel leaning into heavy astrophysics vibes. It's a standalone. When a newly discovered double black hole system begins subtly shifting Earth's orbit, a group of friends must sail the globe on a communal lifeboat to survive a heating world. Despite coming from a Hugo and Tiptree winning author, this intense climate-altered planetary saga received almost no award nominations and few reviews. Its demanding astrophysical premise and emotional depth kept it from reaching a wider audience. And this is where this video series comes to an end. It was actually tougher than ever to discern the most underrated novels for the 2010s, as there's actually less time for the data to add up. I don't even want to think about the 2020s, people. We'll just need to let this current decade move along for a while before considering such things. But please take the time now to share your thoughts on this video and post your comments below. And watch for some great upcoming one-off episodes before I jump off into another viewer-suggested series. You all have been pointing me in some very interesting directions. I love the suggestions. Keep them coming. But that's all for now. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.